Well, Warwick, we've just finished a fascinating, heartbreaking, but also uplifting in the end conversation with Judy Henderson. A whole bunch to talk about, but let's narrow it down. What are the takeaways that listeners and viewers should be zeroing in on? What are some of the, one or two of the big learning points from her very hard to hear at times story?
Gary, when I was reading Judy Henderson's book, When the Light Finds Us, From a Life Sentence to a Life Transformed, this is one of the hardest books I've ever had to read. It was certainly Until It Gets Better. Just when you think things couldn't get worse, it gets worse. She was abused by her father, by a minister at her church, taken advantage of by her first husband, and then conned and tricked by a relationship we had with a man called Greg that, ended up being almost framed for murder and serving 36 years in prison. It was just such having two young kids, just a crushingly sad story. But amidst the devastation and the pain and the agony and just abject injustice, unfairness, abuse of just proportions it's hard to really fathom, there is hope. The triumph of the human spirit, the triumph of faith, the triumph of God breaking in. Just there was a number of moments where it might have been a Catholic ministry, Christian ministries come in. There were times when counselors came in, and slowly she just saw that God hadn't abandoned her. She saw that, what she went through wasn't her fault. Your brain gets rewired through abuse. And it means that she was prime target for somebody like Greg to take advantage of her, and ended up being convicted of a murder she didn't commit. So what's amazing is just the joy in her spirit, the love she has for her kids. She was able to parent her kids even in prison. She has a daughter that's, head of a ministry, and, grandkids, great grandkids. That curse of, generational abuse has been broken. So amidst the abject sadness of a life that was so unfair, of what happened to her, being wrongfully convicted of a crime she didn't commit, there's hope. She was a survivor. She was a fighter. She literally had to fight to survive in prison. And we didn't get into all the details, but throughout a lot of her time in prison, she was focused on helping other people. She would do like paralegal work because she had to, as you do, I guess, when you're in prison, she learned a lot about the law. She would help other prisoners, because typically you can't pay for high priced legal help in prison. She would help them with their cases, in some cases successfully. She set up like almost a beauty parlor kind of in prison to help other women just feel better about themselves. She helped set up programs for battered women to help them as she was getting counseled. She set up programs to help other women get counseling. She set up Patch, where they would set up a trailer outside prison that made it look like a living room, where the women didn't have handcuffs on and could be with their kids and their families in a more normal environment.
Right.
She said, rather than getting bitter, you get better. She spent a lot of her prison life caring for other women, caring for other people, advocating for them, which she still does. So she, was not defeated by her crucibles. She used her crucibles as a jumping off point, as a leverage point to help other women and be advocates for them, and just stay close to her family, not get bitter, forgive. I mean, it's hard to imagine a human being could become the person she became. Many people would have been defeated and would be incredibly bitter. And she's not. It's just hard to fathom, other than, as I said before, the triumph of the human spirit and really the triumph of faith and of God entering into her life. She is a person of very strong faith, and that just comes throughout our discussion.
Yeah. The thing I think people should look for is, and I've said this before about guests on the show, we see it a lot. They've gone through these terrible crucible experiences, say they're at an 11, right? 11 of crucible experiences on a 1 to 10 scale. And yet the joy that comes through in their voice, in their face, in their laughter is at a 15. That to me, that was the story of this conversation we just had with Judy. You heard her talk about the things that she went through. A couple times she got choked up in talking about them, but in the fills between the stories, she's all joy. And that to me is the greatest sign that whatever you're dealing with, folks, whatever crucible that you have, there's joy on the other end of it if you just press in. Fair statement, Warren?
So well said. I think what it shows is that, it's hard to imagine anybody having a worse crucible than Judy Henderson. Maybe as bad, I don't know, but to me, it feels like Olympic level of crucibles. To be wrongly convicted of a crime you didn't commit, to be abused throughout her life, including by a church minister, to serve 36 years in prison. That seems Olympic level of crucible. But she found a way to not be defeated by, to forgive, to use her crucible to help others. And you're right, she has this joy. I mean, she has so much joy that people want her to succeed, so to speak. When she shares, as she left that prison, hundreds, if not 1,000 women are cheering for her. That's not normal. Maybe 1 or 2 buddies will cheer for you, but they said that's unusual. There was this joy in that prison for a week after. That doesn't happen. That shows you the mark that she made on those other women in prison. That shows you the kind of person, the kind of joy and spirit she had. So she's truly an inspirational person. And I'm glad that just the life that she's living now is filled with joy and purpose and meaning. So, it's just an incredible story. It is a story of hope, despite just the tragedy that a lot of her life has been in some ways.